Call your sponsor. Call your sponsor.
Yes.
Welcome back to Bitch Call Your Sponsor. I'm Sam.
And I'm Misty.
Hello, Misty. Shall we do our primary purpose?
Our primary
purpose is for Misty and Sam
to grow
their friendship
and maybe help others.
So the topic that I wanted to bring, it's kind of like nails on a chalkboard to me. And it's this idea of they install their button. They know what button to hit. And, speaking of like family and people going home or having to deal with family members, and I understand the idea, but it irks me. And I think the reason why it irks me is because it's this like victim role of like, oh, there's nothing I could do about this. Like they installed the buttons, and that's all they do is all they want to do is push my button. So experience, strength, and hope. Thoughts?
Yeah, I find this really interesting because a couple of reasons. And one, I think we'll have to circle back to. So one, I'm having this same experience with higher power, with people speaking about their higher power when they're saying like, yeah, I really, wanted this job and was going to apply to it, but something happened and, that's just not what my higher power wants for me. And I guess my higher power doesn't insane kind of thing where it's like it's an offshore person that's responsible for their future. Mm-hmm. And like what you're saying, it's an offshore person that's responsible for their present or their past. Mm-hmm. And the install buttons, I think it would have been very much on this tract I would have sided on the people side before ACA. Mm-hmm. And now what I think is, yeah, they probably did install your buttons and their parents installed their buttons before them. And yeah, it's all there. But the thing is, you're responsible for maintaining your own button.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I think the button thing is like, I don't know. I think it's probably just semantics at the end of the day, because I definitely believe that there are generational patterns and ways of relating to things, money, alcohol, intimacy, all of the above, that I learned from my parents, which I've no doubt that they've learned from their parents, you know what I mean? And it like goes on and on and on. And I think to your point is, I guess for me, it surfaces in 4 where it's like, oh yeah, but I'm still continuing the thing, what fill in the blank. And nothing, it's happened. It's the past tense, but I'm still doing the same. I'm still reacting, which to your point is like the adult continuing to act like the child.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of, I don't know why this story came to mind, but I remember, and I've talked about this before, but I remember going to a work environment where I was very triggered by somebody I worked with, and I had much more time sobriety than they did, and the other people around us weren't sober. But I asked her, how are you doing? And she said, don't ask me that. And she was just like, it's, I'm having a hard day. Don't ask me that. And she walked off, and I, for the rest of the day, gossiped to everyone on set and was like freaking out. How could somebody respond like that? How dare she? Blah, blah, blah. And today, if somebody talked to me like that and I said, how are you doing? And they said, don't ask me today. That's on them. Mm-hmm. It would not push a button within me because I've done work and I can see how how another person responds to the world says more about them than it does about me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without a doubt. I'm the same page. Like, I know for me with regards to alcoholism, anybody that's had an issue with me being sober and or not drinking, it's a reflection of them, right? Anyone that's had an issue about my sexuality is really kind of like, "Oop, no,
Right.
they're having it's the mirror, right? It's like what I think I've shared here. It's the tailgater is not tailgating me. I make it about me when I slam on my brake. They're tailgating the car in front of them. So when I move out of the way, right, and don't engage and make it about me, I 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, they're tailgating the next car that's in front of them.
Oh, I love this. I haven't heard that analogy. I love it. It's the difference between a reaction and a response.
Ooh.
You know, a reaction means you've hit that button. You've swiped it, you've pressed it, you've punched it, you've done something to that button within. But a response is, oh, this is the way you choose to behave? Cool. I'm good.
Wow. So I've been listening. God, this just came up. Everything's just like something just clicked in my brain. This reaction versus response. I was just listening to something and they talked about to come from the scar versus the wound.
Yes. Yes. That's like when my son was playing football and somebody would get hit and then they would lay on the ground just a little bit longer and the coach would say, "Are you injured or hurt?" It was something along those lines. Basically, same thing as scar and wound, you know? Do we need to call 911 or do you just need to catch your breath?
I'm loving how you're pulling this. So I think for me at the core, it's really just this button situation. It's just, but I don't know, it really irks me for some reason, this button thing. I guess because it's like automatically like I'm helpless. They push the button. There's nothing I could do from my end. They push the button, you know? This God thing, I'm very interested. Like, do you have a specific example? I think I'm just coming from a meeting and someone read something from step 3, which I think actually directly relates to this. And I'm actually Googling right now. Because I think, but is there like a specific, it's like, oh, well, it's like someone didn't get a job. And so they're like, oh, well, it's God's plan. And it surfaces like the Wizard of Oz. Is that?
I totally have a story to tell. And it's so funny. I just came from a meeting as well. And it was step 3. And I was getting so irked, like what you're saying. The same thing with the button. It was happening to me with the God's will. I was just, and I'm like, what is this? I'm having such a reaction to so many people going, you know, God's will, you know, and what they read something from a different literature, Joe something. I don't know it.
Joe and Charlie? No.
Yeah, but it may have been the Joe of the Charlie that wrote a book. I don't know for sure. I'll try and look it up, but you know, it was, if you need to be in God's will, not self-will. You have to get rid of all self-will and you have to only be in God's will. And, you know, if you're in self-will, like, you know, you're creating havoc and, you know, you're doomed. You have to always be in God's will if you're, you know, doing the steps right. And, you know, the people, and I'm totally over exaggerating. So, and then the people on the Zoom are like, oh my gosh, yes, God's will. Oh my God, that was so amazing. And I'm like, wait, in the 3rd step, it says it's when we combine or conform. It says conform, but I looked it up and it also means combine God's will with our will, that we begin to use it rightly. So this whole thing, and this is where I kept getting tripped up of like, okay, I'm thinking of myself. So, oh my God, I'm doing it wrong. I'm a bad AA. I'm a bad person. I need to only think God, love, peace. And then I wouldn't. And then I beat myself up. And it's impossible for a human who's down here to experience being flawed and contrast and falling on their ass and picking themselves back up. It's impossible to constantly think, you know, a higher like peaceful Mother Teresa all the time. And I can't go around beating myself up because I have thoughts of self.
Yeah. So I think what was useful for me was the distinction between what is my will versus what is God's will.
Well,
Right.
okay.
So, go ahead. Yeah.
I got to jump in on this because I did give my definition of that, which is God is love, will is thought, my will are my thoughts. So combining the two would be aligning my thoughts with loving thoughts.
Okay. So in the real world, in a job situation,
Mhm.
right, with the example that you gave, like I didn't get a job, so I didn't get that job, so I guess it's not God's will. So like,
Yeah.
I guess it's not loving thought.
Here's my problem. Okay, stay with me because this is great
Yeah.
and I really want to learn. If I want a job in Minnesota as Target's director of marketing for their entire company, and I go up for all the jobs to get there, and they keep telling me no, but I keep going all along, and I do not give up until I fucking get that job. That would be called self-will. But if I do it and the whole time I go, I say, God, please go with me as I do this. Because I'm going to get failures along the way. There's going to be stops. There's going to be people saying no. But if I want something and I go for it, we have a million examples of how people got rejected and then kept going. So when you get told no by the outside world, you're like, I guess it's God's will. I don't understand how to compute these two things.
Mm. So when I first came in, the supermarkets were still giving you an option. And there was no surcharge for a bag, right? It was like, would you like paper or plastic? Right. And I remember going home one night and being like, what is God's will for me? Does God want me to use paper or plastic? What, like first sponsor, what is the will? And so in that scenario, for me, I love how we're going into 3 and it's like March, because it's like, for me, my 3 for me is like I get attached to a specific result. This job that we're talking about in Target, that result, and that's the only possibility, right? And so beg, borrow, steal, which is what I'm hearing you say, to get that job. Step over, do all of this stuff, and there's no love or peace in any of that.
I don't agree. I don't agree.
You don't agree? Okay, got it.
I counter because if I want a job and I go for it and I get rejection along the way, any rejection and I could be loving as I do it. I could be lovingly interviewing. I can be lovingly. I'm not stepping on toes. I'm not hurting anyone. I really want this job and I'm lovingly pursuing it.
Yeah. So I think for me, that's God dinging us. I think for me, step 3 is all about serenity. Like for me, when I'm in a step 3, there's peace. It says in the step, there's peace of mind. We needed to stop playing God, right? And so the way I distinguish my will versus God's will, it says we need to take affirmative action. To your point, it says we need to align our will with God's will. I don't know what God's will is. I know what my will is. And then that's the driving force. And similar to what you said, it's inviting God, right? And I think for me, the distinction is that I'm asking a higher power to help lead me versus me saying, this is what I want. Let's get this. You need to help me get this. Because for me, that's me being the actor, the director, the producer.
Well, I said that I want this job and that I ask God to go with me as we get it. To your point, to lead me.
Yeah.
Call your sponsor.
Call you sponsor. Call you sponsor.
Call your
sponsor. Call you.
Bitch, call your sponsor.
Call your sponsor. Call your
Send us an email with comments, questions, or concerns bcysponsor@gmail.com.
Don't forget to rate 5 stars.